Hi everyone, David here from daviddumaisaudio.com, and in this video I want to show you guys how to create variations and randomizations to sound effects. So the reason why you would want to do this is to add interest to your sounds. So for example, I'm working on a game right now where there's a lot of different guns, and when you're shooting a gun, especially when you're doing it over and over, and like rapid fire, it gets really tiring and really boring to listen to that same sound over and over again, unless you add some sort of variation or randomization to make the sound more interesting, right? So it'll tire out your ear if you don't do that, and it'll really bore the player and the listener. So this is really the reason why you want to do it, and there's 4 ways that I came up with how to do this, how to add randomization and variation. So let's jump into my Cubase project here, and I'll show you guys how I came up with this. A few ways I came up to do this. So this is the example I have here. It's a rocket launcher. So I'll just play the sound for you guys so you guys know what we're listening to. So it's just a fire sound that we're working with right now. So that's the sound I came up with. Right? Okay, so if you just hear that over and over in the game, it can get tiring and boring to listen to. Mind you, a rocket launcher is not like a machine gun where you would fire over and over like multiple rounds, but still, it can get kind of boring to listen to that exact same sound over and over again in this game. So a few ways that you can get around this. The first one, and I'll probably the most simplest and the easiest way, you probably already know about it, and it's to just add pitch randomization. So I have all the sounds from this rocket fire here. So these are all my sounds from this from the rocket fire, and I group them all into this rocket launch bus group here. So now what I can do is I can add pitch randomization. So this is the method number 1 that you can do this, is just add pitch randomization. So now whenever I play this sound, the first time it might be at this pitch level. Next time, maybe I'll pitch it down 1. Maybe down 7. Sounds a bit choppy, so I'll do format. I'll do like maybe down 6. Maybe down 17. So it's a bit much if I do 17. Right? So like that. And maybe you can even go up a little bit if it doesn't distort the sound too much. Right, so you can play around with that, and you can do like, and then you can get a whole bunch of different and export those sounds just from pitch shifting the sound around, and then you can get that variation like that. So that's one way you can do it. Really simple. I also want to show you guys how you can do it inside of Fmod, and you can do the same thing in Wise. So for example, if you have a sound like that, let's see where my rocket launch is. Here. So I have multiple layers for this sound, but I'm just going to show you guys, like, let's say this was the sound of the rocket launch, like that. Then what I could do now is I could just go in here, and you can just add modulation and random modulation. So I had it on before, so I'm just going to put it back, and then you can go, 2. So now it's going to randomize the pitch every time it plays by 2 semitones. So this is great because now you don't have to go in and manually, export the sound file for every single variation that you want. It's just going to automatically and randomly generate that for you through these middleware. So like Fmod or Wise. Anyway, it's just a quick thing. I wanted to show you that so that you're aware of that. Okay, so this is way number 1, is to do pitch variation. All right, so the second way that I came up with adding variation or randomization to a sound effect is by adding a plugin to that sound. So right now we're going to keep going with this rocket fire sound here that I have. And so let's have it here. So you can already see here, I've already included a few plugins. So for example, this is a free plugin, by the way, from Xfer's website. I think that's how you say it, Xfer. Anyways, OTT is the multiband compressor. So I put this in. So if we listen to the sound without it, and I can add it in. So it's very minor, and you can see I only have a 10% or 9% depth, and that's kind of like your mix knob. So if I went all the way up to 100, it'd be like, really, you could hear the difference. Right, it's really bright. You really hear the compression there. So I only put about 10, usually about 10%. And yeah, so just adding that adds this extra variation and randomization to your sound. So I could export that as a potential sound file. You can also do stuff like adding filters. So that could be anything from, adding an EQ and putting in a filter. You can also do something like I like this one by Melda Productions called M Transformer, because I can just like randomize and play around with different stuff. So if I just, let's see here. All right, so I'm just going to put this on and put it on loop here so that I can see what I can come up with. Right, anyways, not the best sound, but hopefully you can kind of get an idea of what I'm getting at here. Is you can kind of do different randomizations of it. So the one I did up here, maybe it's a bit extreme. Maybe I could dial it down the wet dry bit, and then that could be another randomization for the sound. I could do something like here. That's what I can do. Right, so again, you can just play around with like random like plugins that come with this thing, and then you can get more variations on that sound, export them out, and then suddenly you have all these new extra sounds you can play with. So that's method number 2. Method number 3 that I have here is to add sweeteners. And by the way, we're kind of increasing in complexity until you get to the most useful way of doing randomization at the end of the video, which is what I'm going to show here. So number 3 is to add sweeteners. Sweeteners are what I call things like transient sweeteners. So let's see if I have one of those here. I do. So let's play it. So transient sweeteners are basically just like something that just plays at the transient and just adds that punch or something to the start of the sound, like this, right? So this is kind of like a transient sweetener. This one as well. So just at the start of the sound, it just adds character to the transient, basically, right? So it can be like a bass kind of sound that adds the transient. It can be like a metallic, like I just played, or this one, right? So that's what I kind of what I call or consider sweeteners. Other things could be like whooshes. Anything that's a whoosh could be like a sweetener. Any kind of bass rumble sound maybe could be a sweetener. It kind of depends. Generally, though, I use like transients, stuff at the transient, or just as whooshes, as sweeteners. So just by adding these, you suddenly change the sound. So if I play this sound without these, let's hear it. So it still sounds good. And if I add them in now, right, you just get that extra punch and crispiness at the beginning of the sound. Right, so it's very minor. You might not even notice that it's there, but it does make a difference, and you do hear the difference in the sound. And it's not like if it's not there, it's a bad sound, and if it is there, it's a bad sound, or a great sound for that matter. But it adds that variation that could be just enough to change up the sound so that it keeps the listener engaged and interested in the game. And finally, the fourth way that you can add, randomization and variation, and this is I think the ultimate way to do it, is by adding layers. So as you can see here, I already have a whole bunch of layers for this sound. So if we listen here, I have this sound. Let's hear this one here. And this one here. Right, so I have all these layers that make up the sound. Now, what's great about layering and adding variation in this way is that, as you can see here, I have like a lot of different types of sound. So I have, for example, this one is kind of like a sci-fi. It has like a sci-fi element at the beginning. Right, well, because of that, I can just now take this sound and try to find another one that's similar to this. Or what I can do is go back to the other 3 ways that I just showed for adding randomization and use that. So for this one sound now, I can go and add pitch randomization. I can go and add a plugin. What was the other one? I can add a sweetener. I mean, it kind of already added in here. But anyways, you kind of get the idea. So now you can add even more randomization just by affecting this one sound, and then you can do this one layer, and then you can do that with all the other layers as well. So you can really create a massive amount of randomization in this way. So this is the final way of layering. And what's also great is for those who are a bit more advanced, once you're inside of Fmod, like I showed at the beginning of this video, you can then go in and add layers. So all these layers, I can import them in separately into Fmod and layer them out, and then I can add randomization to individual layers, which again, Fmod is gonna randomly generate those different pitches. You can also do it with volume, so randomize different volume levels, and so that every time that the gun is fired, you get a new sound that's automatically randomized and generated from the Fmod engine. Right, so these are 4 different ways that you can randomize and really add a lot of variation to your sound to keep your sound effects interested and keep the players engaged in the video game. And as you can see, this is all just from one sound effect, right? Like I'm not talking about creating new sound effects. I'm just talking about how do you change and add variation to this one sound effect. And of course, you can do this for every sound effect in your game to add a whole new kind of depth and audio to your game. So anyways, I hope you guys found this useful. I hope this was helpful for your sound design, and maybe you can kind of take this into account whenever you're creating sounds, and hopefully it'll make your games and your sound design a lot better. So thanks so much for watching, guys. If you guys have any questions, leave it in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.